Forward to in the event that Donald Trump loses, right? I mean, I keep vacillating back and forth about how much I should sort of embrace the numbers, and you hear some of the pollsters saying like this could be a huge blowout, and it could. And it's also sort of it's also I think problematic in and of itself that it would need to be
right,
as opposed to just like being a close election, because I think there is a general feeling that if this is close, there is enough of an apparatus already set up by the Republicans to diminish it. I mean, to undercut it. But let's talk a little bit about what we anticipate happening if Trump does lose in terms of like what's happening with Republicans. I mean, there was a piece I had yesterday, and I can't find it at the moment, about I think it's a guy's name, Potter, who was formerly a member of the Federal Election Commission, who's now working for a Protect the Vote organization. And he said, there was a quote in there that I just found stunning, where this guy had said something to the effect of like, I just can't believe that there's a Republican who's trying to diminish the number of people voting. And I was just like, what?
right.
We have tape of Paul Weyrich in 1980. There's video. I mean, people can Google this, where he is addressing a Christian organization, some type of big conference, and he chastises them for being goo-goo about government, saying that we don't want there to be a lot of voters, that we have more leverage when there's fewer people who vote. And this isn't, Weyrich is not some type of outlier. Co-founded the Heritage Foundation, co-founded the American Legislative Executive Council. I mean, these are two pillars of the conservative corporate movement in this country. He coined the phrase moral majority, which dominated our politics and sort of, it is mutated, but it is more or less like, the next, or I should say the antecedent to, the Tea Party, even on some level. So this has been a Republican staple for a long time. The problem is the Republican Party. Right. Donald Trump just happens to be the mouthpiece for it. At
he's
this point.
The current avatar of it. Right.
Exactly. Well, how successful do you think they're going to be if Donald Trump loses in sort of rewriting this narrative? Like, how long is it going to take them to be like Donald Trump was, it wasn't so much the policies, it was Donald Trump was a horrible person?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's going to depend a lot on how much help they get, both from the mainstream press and from the Democratic Party, I think. And to be very pessimistic, it's you can go back to 2009 and just how quickly George W. Bush just literally disappeared from everyone's mouths and then eventually from their consciousness until he, came back as a beloved painter.
Right. Barack Obama was very adamant about turn the page. We did turn the page, except for the problem is the book is still there, and sometimes these things come back to haunt you.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I think that on the one hand, a lot of people have been very radicalized by this presidency on the sort of soft liberal and left side. A lot of people got very radicalized by this, and you hope that doesn't go away the day Biden is president-elect. And you hope that what that means is that they force the Democrats who rely on them for their support, they sort of force them to actually treat the Republicans as a dangerous opponent and not, the people who can be reasoned with now that the bad man has gone away.
Right.
And a lot is it's gonna be a little different from George W. Bush too, obviously, because Trump, the person, is not going to disappear to Texas. He's going to be holding rallies, probably for the rest of his life, just because he enjoys it.
He's going to be like Sarah Palin was.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
totally,
people forget that when Sarah Palin lost,
Yeah.
She was still on the scene as a political figure for a couple of years,
right?
Like, touring around at these places. And Donald Trump is going to do that times, I don't know, 5 or 10, right? In terms of like his presence. And he's probably going to have some type of media organization. And he's basically going to dare the Democrats and I think the Washington bureaucracy, and maybe not just the Washington bureaucracy, but maybe also like, you know, some state attorney generals to come after him.
Yeah. I think so. I mean, it is like, I keep, you know, the like this, the you know, that the Time story about Trump and Turkey, and how he was saying, like, you know, they couldn't quite, you know, no one could figure out why Trump is telling him to lay off this investigation, but like, you just got to
just to be clear, let me just fill people in on what the story was.
Yeah. It was there was a criminal investigation into a Turkish bank that was violating the Iranian sanctions. And when the U.S. attorney in charge of it, Bill Barr, kept telling him to lay off, and they wanted to basically end the case with a slight admission of wrongdoing, but no punishment for any individuals or the bank itself. And it was clear that it was happening, like, directed by Barr acting on behalf of Trump, who had some sort of crooked arrangement with the Turkish government. This should have, I mean, we say this like monthly, should have been a blockbuster story in a normal era, but it's one of those things where I do wonder if not, you know, I think journalists have been working as hard as they can to uncover these things, but I do think, like, the fact that Democratic leadership in Congress decided this year after impeachment that they were just going to lay off oversight entirely because they thought it was a political loser, like, that will determine, I think, what the future of this looks like, because what haven't we learned yet, and how will we ever learn it? You know, like,
they had laid off oversight before impeachment too, largely.
Yeah, they were forced in. I mean, they were effectively forced into doing impeachment as narrowly as possible. And that's what I wonder about. Like, you know, when is Trump going to be in legal trouble, or like, are there going to be consequences for what happened during this presidency? Is like, this is, you know, this has been the time to have been investigating and uncovering the wrongdoing. And outside of like a few particularly good journalistic outlets, you know, no one has been putting in that work.
I mean, this is one of the themes that I've been, you know, and I think we've probably talked about it too in the past, harping on for an extended period of time, because the Democrats have failed to show the American over and over again. Impeachment was one of the few opportunities, and yes, Nancy Pelosi was forced into doing it by a lot of even those frontline Democrats that she supposedly was protecting. They came out publicly and said, "We want this because there needs to be some accounting." Even those frontline Democrats who are supposedly politically more moderate and ideologically not necessarily aligned with the left of the party. And I think that's true from an ideological standpoint. They tend to be younger, though, and they also tend to be more partisan. And they seem to understand that there's an expectation that they will not just. I mean, I'm looking at this even in the most crass, I think, sort of like cynical terms. There's an expectation that their constituents want them to be opponents of the Republicans.
Yes.
And one thing is clear from impeachment, you know, you don't even have to follow impeachment. When the Democrats say we're impeaching Donald Trump over this, they are showing, not telling, that there's something wrong. Yes. And when, you know, Nancy Pelosi can send a letter or Chuck Schumer can send a letter, but you need to do something.
Right.
That I could watch, and with the volume off on the TV and know that something was wrong. You know, like they shouldn't have gone in for the hearing for Amy Coney Barrett.
Right.
They should have showed that it was a sham, not get in there, participate in the sham and say, this is a sham, until Dianne Feinstein says it was a sham, but it was also one of the best shams I've ever been to.
I'm so glad you organized such a wonderful sham.
Right.
Well, and the other thing, like the other crazy lesson of impeachment that everyone's forgotten is how many people working in the administration, various capacities, came out of the woodwork, which has been something that no one has been willing to do until they leave the administration and then write a book. That was like the time when it actually showed there was an appetite within this administration among lower level people to actually, they were wishing for an outlet to show what they have been witnessing.
Yep.
And I don't know, it's wild that the idea that uncovering wrongdoing by the administration is a political loser, it
is bizarre. And I will say, I think the media has done a pretty good job, but the problem is that they can only sort of like uncover these things.
Yeah.
They can't really make it a story on their own, although, they certainly have, but in the past, but to the extent that they have, I'm thinking like the emails in 2016.
Yeah, exactly.
They are able to do it because they can pay, the Republicans give them the scaffolding.
Yes.
For stuff like that. Benghazi, it's fake, this and that, but they built the edifice, and then the media can sort of operate on top of that. If the Democrats don't react,
right,
the media is built in such a way that it cannot it can't echo these things. It
cannot. Yeah. So the New York Times can put a big investigation in Trump's taxes, for example. It got a lot of mileage out of that. It put it on the front page a couple times. The New York Times cannot continually put Trump's taxes on the front page every day unless someone is making it continually news. They uncovered what there is to uncover, and then they had to move on because there wasn't an official. There was no official waving them around saying this warrants an investigation. Here's what's scandalous about it.
That brings us to the media. We can talk a little bit about that. And let me just one more note. We have a clip of Marsha Blackburn, senator from Tennessee, is she right? And she was on a committee hearing with I think it was the head of ABC or of Alphabet, I should say, Google, essentially. And she was talking about, there was an employee there who had said something critical of her. And she started by saying, hey, is that person still there? Have you fired that person yet? As if this was like a normal behavior of an elected official to threaten someone from a company about an individual.
Yes.
No, this is not like you're involved in predatory behavior. You're involved in monopolistic behavior. We're going to take you down. No, it's like, you've got an employee there that I have an issue with.
I have a personal issue.
I have a personal issue with. And that is, when you allow Trump to get away with this stuff, that's the danger, is right. It starts to get like, that's what normalization is.
Right.
Normalization is not like, okay, Trump did this again. It is that it is adopted as a modality by our political class, and all of society doesn't just fail to hold him account, but it ends up failing to hold everybody to account to these standards.
Right. Right. The threat of normalization is not that everyone's going to start speaking in incoherent run-on sentences at rallies where old people collapse from heat exhaustion. It's like, not like now that Trump, it's that people are going to behave with complete impunity, believing they will never be held to account for anything they do.
Exactly. And that's what's happening. I mean, that story came and went, and that's it. Boom.